So of course, when we first bring up Blender, we launch it, right? Remember, you just go into your the Blender folder, right, where you zipped it. Remember, you download the zip version of it, right? You go to Downloads, you kind of double-click on this, so it brings that up, and then you can just drag this onto the desktop. It can even be just, right, the kind of desktop right here. You just left-click drag there. And then it's going to be available to you as a regular folder in which you can basically, right, if I just go to desktop here, you should be able to find it. Where you just go in there, and then you'll see your Blender icon, right, your Blender executable, the application. And you just double left-click on it, right, and it'll launch it. Be aware, too, you might have tablet mode on your devices. So you might just want to go onto the very side over here. There's like this little kind of little window thing down here. You click on that, and just make sure tablet mode's off, right, because that can make it a little bit weird to interact with it normally. So good idea to just kind of make sure, right, that tablet mode's off if you are having, like if it's just not behaving normally, make sure tablet mode's off, right? Now, of course, one of the things I could always do is I could always create a new general scene, new file. I could go to Open to find whatever I was working on. But you'll notice that in the recent files is that actual table that I was started up on yesterday, right? So actually your recent files will also, at the very top, have what you last worked on. So of course, you can always create a new file from right here. You can always open, if it's something that you maybe haven't worked on for a while, you can always go to Open to find it where you saved it. But also, of course, recent files is right here. And there's that 3D Modeling B table that I started saving, right? And it saves as these .blend files. These are Maya or Blender files, right? So when you click on it, it opens that Blender scene. And everything you're doing to that scene is in there, right? And we can see that that was kind of one of the big things that we ended up doing, right? Is we kind of showed off how to create the mirror modifier for the first time. And I'll still be showing that naturally. I'll eventually show you how to turn some add-ons on later in the week to aid in some of this. But for right now, the first couple days, we'll just kind of keep that to a minimum. And I showed off the Bevel Tool, right? And remember, of course, Alt-left mouse button rotates camera. Alt-middle mouse button moves camera. Remember, a 3-button mouse, awesome. You just use that scroll wheel like a middle mouse button. And of course, our quiz for today, camera zoom, Alt-right mouse button, right? So Alt and your right mouse button will zoom your camera in, right? So just kind of remember those things. Of course, if you feel like your tabletop's a little thick, right? Remember, one of the things you could do is go and hit 4 for face mode, right? Or sorry, 3 for face mode. 4 is object mode. But remember, you also have these modes up here. And you notice I'm repeating a lot from the last couple days because these are some fundamentals. And so particularly these first several videos, I am going to do a lot of repeating, right? When we get to later videos, I'll kind of, you know, we'll have new content, and I'll kind of mention the quick key really quickly, but I won't kind of dwell on it quite as long. But since you guys are almost all of you guys are totally new to this, it's really good to reinforce and continually repoint these things out. But remember, you have, in particular, you see, remember, I'm in Modeling Workspace also, right? When I save my Blender file, it kind of remembers whatever workspace you were in last, right? Modeling. But remember, you have these little tabs here, Layout, Modeling, and they have different focused interfaces with pretty much all of the tools relevant to your modeling when you're in the Modeling Workspace. And remember, one of those things right up here is this Mode area. Actually, usually you have this in most viewports, a lot of the workspaces. But remember, right here you'll see the modes, right? It's like this little pull down right here. And for us right now, since we're not sculpting yet, that'll be kind of the second half of this term, and texture painting will be second half of this term. We're really just sticking with the top 2 modes, Object Mode 4, Edit Mode 1. But also remember, when you're in Edit Mode, you have Vertex, Edge, Face right here as buttons. And of course, there's quick keys. 1, 2, 3, and of course 4 is Object Mode. So those are some quick keys that you should get to know pretty well also, and those will be early mini quizzes as well, right? Because honestly, being able to navigate, move, rotate, scale, select, move to your major selection features, quick keys make that whole process faster and easier. And Blender's industry compatible has really smart, logical, kind of ergonomic, easy to use muscle memory ones, right? So of course we go to face mode, and you can always left click, right? when you turn industry paddle on by default, it uses left click as the interaction, which is pretty standard for most software. So when you left click, right, left mouse button, it just will select, right, left click. So I can select that top face. Remember, your selection tool's right here. Q is the quick key for that. Q for quiz, Q for quit, right? W is move, E is rotate, R is scale. But they are right here also. So particularly when you're in modeling workspace, you'll really see kind of like your major selection manipulators here. You'll see some of your major tools like extrude and loop cut, as well as bevel right there. So I can always select that face and, you know, turn on the move tool, W for move. And remember, this has these little kind of arrows, right, that match up to your Cartesian coordinate system, right, X, Y, Z. And if I want to move down, I just left-click drag on that blue arrow, and it'll move it down just along that blue axis. So when you select an arrow, it constrains and moves just along that one direction. Now, the center one is view move. That'll move based on the camera, so it's kind of like you're sliding it along the 2D view of the camera itself. These squares will actually move it along only two axes, but kind of relative to that square itself. So when you actually get used to kind of how those manipulators work, they're really nice and pretty standard. Everything you're learning in Blender, particularly industry compatible on, when you go to other software, you'll already feel comfortable. Particularly if you switch to Maya at some point, you'll already kind of know a lot of the fundamentals and a lot of the shortcuts. Even though Blender's great, and I prefer it over Maya. So remember, you have these manipulators, and it's just those things I want to reinforce and make sure that you guys know and understand how to use. It's one of the reasons why we're not doing a terribly complicated table, right? And we're keeping this first one a little easy. Now, at this point, I do feel like I want to kind of have a bit more of a bevel on the top here, right? So one of the things I could do is go to 2 for edge mode, right? So remember, once you're in edit mode, though, you'll have these options here, vertex, edge, face. And I click on edge mode, but 2 is the quick key for that. Now, even if your move tool's on, double left clicking will select an edge loop, right? So remember, one of those great quick keys, if you double left click, right? Just double click with the left mouse button on an edge, it'll select an edge loop, kind of going that direction that that edge is already going. So we've got that. And then, of course, we can go to bevel. Now, remember, when you turn the bevel tool on, it's not really beveling yet, right? You don't even see the bevel down here in the corner, right? Now, there are 2 ways to bevel. One, anytime you see like a yellow handle like this, that is going to give you your interaction control to start doing it, right? But there is kind of a neat shortcut that works well for most of your modeling tools. Not all of them, but most of them, which is your middle mouse button. Now in this case, I'm just going to left click on the yellow, and you see how as I left click drag on that yellow, and I'm holding down the left mouse button, right? I haven't let go of the left mouse button. So we get that kind of nice little bevel there. All right, so basically, so yeah, it's kind of where we have those at, right? Okay. Now, once this is clicked on, right, we can go to bevel here, right? Because it's still in bevel mode. It's still in that same bevel. So you can always click on this little bevel down here, and you can adjust the width, but you can also adjust the segments right here. So width is the size of that bevel, right? Kind of the distance between those edge loops. Segments actually gives you more edge loops that kind of carry through there to give it more rounded shape. So bevel is, of course, grabbing the little yellow kind of cursor to kind of actually do the bevel. But you can also add segments to give it a more proper rounded corner. Because remember, things have rounded corners, right? Things have rounded corners. Otherwise, you'd be cutting yourselves all the time. Of course, you can make them more rounded, more clean by adding more bevels. It depends on the budget you have for your polygon counts. We're going to try to keep it a little more efficient for this. Now, of course, there's more things I could do. Later this week, I'm going to show you how to inset to kind of create a little more detail on the tabletop. But I figured we could start building the legs today. We're going to still do a little more work to the tabletop. I just figured, hey, a little more shaping, a little more with the bevel tool, always good. But like I said, one of the things I wanted to show you guys was the actual leg, right? Okay, so the way we can start to make a leg is actually pretty simple, right? I can just go to add, because I want to kind of make this as a separate object. So I'm going to go to the add menu here. And there's actually a new add tool right here, which is actually pretty cool, but I'll save that for a little later on to show you. But if you go to the add menu up here, you will see that this is where all your major primitives are. So if I want, table legs often end up being cubes or cylinders. It kind of depends on what kind of shape you want. I feel like we're going to kind of do a little bit more of a cube, kind of arched leg coming out. That allows some good loop cut practice, a little bit of shaping practice. We'll definitely do some stuff with the screw modifier as well as more cylindrical shapes later on in this project. But for right now, we'll keep this one a little box here. So I'm going to add another cube. There we go. And I can close this up down here, right? Just left click on it to kind of close it. Now, at this point, we've got that cube in there, and what we could do is we could start to move it down. Now, at this point, it's already all selected, and that's actually good. I kind of want that in this case. And actually, my bad, it actually added it to this already existing one, so I'm going to undo really quick. And I'm going to go to 4 for object mode, right? So remember, Control-Z undoes. If you're already in, like, say, vertex, edge, or face mode, it will actually add it to the existing object, which is actually really cool. But in this case, I didn't want to do that. So I go back to object mode, and then I can just click off the object, and then when I go to add, you see there's more options in here. So add mesh, cube, and now you see that it creates it as a separate object. Now, if I move it over right now in object mode, what will happen is it'll move this cursor with it. And of course you can fix that and you can recenter that cursor. It's actually a useful feature. We're going to see it a lot more this term than we did for my actual last class because we were doing character creatures. We just didn't need it that much. So we'll see the cursor features definitely more on this project, in these projects. But in this case, I actually want to move not the object, but the polygons in the object. So that way that center stays on the center of the world. So I'm going to go to 3 for face mode, right? Edit mode. 3 for face mode. In this case, all of the faces are still selected. So if I want, I can hit R for scale. Remember, edit mode here, boom. And then, face mode. Scale's right here, of course, but R is the quick key. Now, middle mouse button will do a uniform scale. So if I hold down and drag middle mouse button, you see how it scales all 3 at the same time? I can then maybe scale this up a little bit. Maybe in a little bit there on the red, a little bit on the green. Remember, you can just left-click drag on those handles. I'm going to hit W for move. And I can move this over on the blue, the red. Maybe grab that square, right? Because remember, that square allows you to move on 2 axes at the same time. Now, I'm not going to do actually much detail into it because I actually kind of want to stop this lecture for you guys here in a minute. We'll actually do some more loop cuts on this, do more shaping to it later this week. But we can start to get ourselves at least the leg into position. Now, you notice I went to face mode. All the faces were selected. Remember, if they're not, you can always go to the select menu, select linked. And that'll select all the linked polygons. And you see by moving and scaling in polygon mode with all the polygons for that leg selected, it kept the center on the center. I can now go back to object mode. And remember, the blue wrench over here in the properties area is for our modifiers. So I can go to add modifier. And remember how we kind of saw this the other day? We can go to mirror. And you see how it automatically mirrors on the x-axis? Remember, I also like having the triangle on, so it shows the full effect on the mesh. So you see the wireframes and the selections on both sides. But here's the thing. This is a pretty symmetrical model already, right? The table's kind of built to be symmetrical. We didn't move off the center. So if I want to, I can actually turn on the y-axis also. And you will notice that that allows me to model symmetrically on 2 axes, right? In fact, I do want those out a little bit, so I think I will do that. So when you turn your mirror on, you can actually pick all 3 axes at the same time. We won't really need z-axis, right? But we can actually do x and y. And that's actually really cool. The mirror modifier, when you get used to it, it's really cool. Now, because these are truly independent polygons with no center, we don't need clipping on, right? It's only kind of for that kind of object. All right. And remember, of course, we can go File, Save, or Save As if you haven't saved it and you want to save a different version of it, right? So I can always go Save As, and I can save this as Table 2, right? So same thing, just to add a 2 at the end, so it's the next version, right? And there we go. And I think that'll be a good place to stop for today. We'll keep doing some more modeling on this, of course, this week.